So these will be the 3 points that I'm going to try to make today. So if you're trying in your head to visually organize what we're going to do, one is I'm going to give you a beginning definition of liturgy. I'm going to talk about the goals of liturgy, and then I'm going to talk about the connection to love. You'll see the actual text that shows up on the presentation is very sparse, right? So that way, I could talk a little bit more about it than simply having you focus just on writing. Sometimes that's necessary, but not today, all right? The first slide is not something you need to write down. These are just questions that I think are important. I did not go to a Catholic high school. There were no Catholic high schools in my town. Went to a Catholic school up to 8th grade. I would have had to go to a boarding school after that. Plus, my high school had a football team that was ranked nationally, always. So you wanted to play for them, right? So my formal education in the Catholic faith really stopped at 8th grade. I went to youth group, but that wasn't catechetical. If you have questions about the Catholic faith, if you're Catholic, right, and you're questioning the faith, or if you're not Catholic and you want to know more about it for whatever reason, just to be informed or you're curious, or if you doubt things, you are not going to have more doubts and questions than me. I can guarantee you that. I was on the verge of leaving the Catholic faith for certain reasons. Nothing that happened, just because of me not being able to get answers I want. I was taught in the 70s. Nuns said, this is what it is. You write it down. Who are you to question Jesus? Not that it was always that bad, but I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted. I was a pretty, hyperactive, rambunctious, curious young guy. And when I'd ask questions like, for instance, Sister, you keep saying that Mary will help us get to heaven. I don't know what that means. How does Mary help me get to heaven? She says, well, if you're not good enough, then you can't get in the front door with Jesus, then you go around the side and she'll let you in the window. Okay. I can't tell you the number of heresies that just happened in that sentence. Okay?
Is that a contradiction to salvation by faith?
Yes. It's also saying that being good is what gets you into heaven. And that somehow Mary's going to circumvent her own son's plan. I get what she was saying. She probably was used to teaching even littler kids. But that didn't do it for me. As a matter of fact, it kind of set me off a little bit and thought, for God's sakes, can't somebody just talk to me straight? So if you have questions about, why do you have to go to Mass? If it doesn't make any sense to you, why you can't just stay home? I hope you don't think you're the first person that pondered that, all right? I mean, can't I just be a good person? Can't I just stay home on Sundays? Because you know what? There's so many hypocrites at Mass. So therefore, going to Mass isn't really going to do it. Because a lot of people I know that go to Mass, they're terrible people. So I'm going to stay home. Because I'm a good person, isn't that what really matters? Okay? And the answer to that is no. I mean, again, okay? So what I'm going to try to do is I want to satisfy your questions. And by satisfy, it doesn't mean that I'm going to win you over, but I want to knock you off your stool. I want you to say, you're going to have to dig deeper. In other words, if you are intent, as I was at one point, to leave the Catholic Church, you better do so well-informed and with good reasons, not because you're apathetic, not because you have too many things going on in life, not simply because you don't understand, right? 3 enemies of education or 3 enemies of faith, all right? So we're going to talk about this. And why do we even need these rituals? Why can't I just, it's between, don't you hear a lot of evangelicals? It's between me and Jesus. But why can't we as Catholics or Orthodox be between me and Jesus? Why do we have to have all this stuff between us, right? I should be able to answer that for you. And then what's the connection between what happens at Mass and during the week? This was a big one for me. Sister, why do I have to go to Mass? Because you get grace. Okay. What do I do with this grace? Well, you use it to live throughout your life. So why do I have to go to Mass twice? Well, because during the week, the world, living in the world, it's like, it's not like it goes away, but it diminishes, so then you go back on Sunday and you receive more grace. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that was an image of a gas station. It was. And it made no sense to me. Okay, and I'm not trying to pick on my 8th grade teachers or 7th grade teachers. I had to figure that out. You know, what is the connection? And the irony is, it's all in the Mass already. You know, you'll find poets, comedians, and philosophers are all artists, you know, and the only difference between them and you, if you're not one of them, is they pay attention. The comedian sees the same world that you do, they just find certain things funny because they paid attention. The philosopher finds certain things profound in the world, which is the same world you're in, they just paid attention, right? The artist and the poet sees beauty where it's before your eyes too, but it's not always evident to you. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to investigate this stuff. So, first things first. Does anybody ever watch Everyone Loves Raymond? Oh, okay, good, finally. First period, like one person kind of went like this. I was ready to walk out of the school. Okay? So, listen up.
I practice being a good person every day, okay? I'm a decent fellow. I do good things. I always leave a big tip. If a squirrel runs in front of the car, do I not swerve? I'm considerate of people's feelings. Remember the plumber who came over with the big eye? I treated him like a completely normal person. Okay, so why do I have to go to church every Sunday to prove my goodness? I'm living it.
Well, you know, since you are so good during the week, maybe on Sundays we should have everybody come over here and sit around you.
Good comeback. All right. Here's what I want you to do. If you have cell phones, get them out. You won't be able to text from the iPad. I would like to see how that works, but right now I can't. I don't know anything about how to make it happen. Okay. What I'm doing here, let me explain to you, is this is my way to get anonymous polls so that you don't feel inhibited about asking me, or you don't feel inhibited. I said it right. This is your message. Stephen Bueno, 595. Text that as a message to 2233s. The phone number, it's a short code. The phone number is 22333. So you send the message, and you should get a text back that says you've joined the session. Okay. If you have difficulties, you know, we can't iron them out right here. So Stephen Bueno, 595.
Is it all capital?
It doesn't matter, I don't believe. And you send that to short code 2233s. For those of you that are jumping ahead, once you get back, it says you've joined. Now I want you to answer the question. Do you personally think missing Mass is a sin? A, you would send A to 2233, or B or C, depending on what you choose. Okay? So once you've joined, you should receive a message back saying you've joined the session, and now you can choose A, B, or C.
Is it case sensitive?
I don't know. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think it is.
Is it case sensitive? Okay.
No, it's not.
Okay. So once you do this,
Oh, that's
yeah.
That's that a zero or no? It's a no, right?
That's a no. That's my last name.
Yeah, I put a zero, that's what I did.
Yeah. Typically, electronic things, 0 has a slash through it so that you know it's a 0, and O's do not. Now that's the question. Do you personally think missing Mass is a sin? And then now you text either A, B, or C, depending on your choice. C's a catch-all. I understand that. Because there are going to be people here that, you know, they're not Catholic or Christian. So they don't have really like a dog in the race. Next time I'm not going to do percentages. I'm going to do numbers of people. Because that way, if we have 18 people participating, the next time I can see you still have 18. I'll give you a minute. We have one more after this. But Now here's how this works. Isn't this a little better than raising your hand? Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not working. It says sorry, registration from
No, you have plus zero.
Can I help her?
One or two. Yeah, you can go back and see if you can help her.
You know what?
I will use these not. I won't say regularly, but whenever I need you to give me some sort of response and I want you to maintain your anonymity, I'll do it this way.
The number is the number you're texting.
I'll give another minute or two just for those of you that are figuring this out.
It's not that hard, Roland.
Well, you don't type yes or no. You type A, B, or C. Heine's a man.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. One more. I can't stay on it all day. So it looks like the majority say no. All right? Now, I'm sure you're aware the Catholic Church says yes. All right. Well, now, I'll explain this, okay? But I get why people say no. I do. All right? It's my job to show you, not just tell you that that's wrong, but to show you why you're probably misunderstanding it. All right? One more. Yeah, this is the last one. Now, do you personally think not loving God or your neighbor is a sin? I mean, if somebody said, okay, you're a Catholic, should you love your God or neighbor? Is that a sin if you don't? Would you say yes, no, or, I have no strong opinion? And again, you don't typically need to be Catholic to understand the question or put it in context.
What? That's not the whole number, 71.
You had your moment of fame.
Yeah, that's Jesus varies with the number.
See, the reason why I'd rather not do percentages is right now, if I knew 18 people participated in the previous one and I saw 18, I know we're capped out. But that's okay. All right. So anyway, we can see what's clear. Missing Mass is not a sin according to, our anonymous poll. But if you don't love God or neighbor, that is a sin. All right. Okay. Now, I appreciate that, but you put the phones away now. We won't need them. I'd like your attention otherwise.
Are we ever going to do it again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we will. All right. So, let's start. First of all, this is an unfamiliar term. All right? Catholics more so use the word Mass. Orthodox would use the word Divine Liturgy, although they almost mean, the Eucharistic liturgy. So, what I want to do for you, what I want you to know from this, let me say it this way, what you need to know, and when I use words like you need to know, that's pen to paper, okay? All Masses are liturgies, all right? So every Mass is a liturgy, but not all liturgies are Masses, all right? Liturgy is a broader term. Liturgy could be, there could be baptismal liturgies, liturgy of the hours. There are liturgies that are not what we would call as Roman Catholics a Mass. So if I ask you, or if you see at a true and false, all liturgies are Masses, that's false, right? All Masses are liturgies, that's true. All right. But anyway, I get it's an unfamiliar term. So I'm very big on etymology. Does anybody know what etymology is?
Study of the word.
Yes. An etymology is not a definition. All right? So if I ask you for the definition of liturgy, and you write down Laos, Aragon, false. Okay, that's the etymology. But the etymology always gives us insight into it. Now, it happens to be, in this case, ironically, that they would be the same, although this is in Greek. Laos is simply the Greek word for people, right? And Aragon, the Greek word for work. So we're going to start out with a definition as liturgy is the work of the people. Okay? Liturgy is the work of the people. In the ancient days, this was a political term, would have meant some public service to the government, all right? So we've adapted this. the word mass actually comes from etymology, so it was a dismissal, but that kind of got coined with us probably from the 6th century. But properly speaking, the Mass is a liturgy, really a two-part, liturgy of the Word and liturgy of the Eucharist. But the etymology, liturgia, literally means the work of the people, and even though I said that they differ sometimes, the etymology from the definition, here it's the same thing. So our definition is the work of the people. Now that is hardly comprehensive, all right? A little bit of a note here. Definitions can be very difficult in generally speaking. It's one thing if you simply define, like if I can ask you to define the color red, you might struggle, You might be able to talk about, the cyan, the yellow, and the various colors that come to it. You might say things that are red, so we struggle. I mean, as an aside, anytime I say an aside, this is not part of the course. But if you ever wonder what the definition of a definition is, there's probably like 6, all right? But the problems with definitions are they work well for like certain things. But when once we get into profound and sublime things, including us, right? Like if you're dating somebody, nobody's going to say define the person, but your mom or dad may say tell me about them. They're asking, I want to know this person. And you're going to struggle. So you're going to talk about various things. Oh, she has beautiful hair. Oh, she's not so tall. I mean, you're going to start describing because you're going to struggle, right? You're going to talk about how nice she is, and she's in field hockey and so on and so on, right? If I had you to define a pencil, you would say maybe how we use it, or oftentimes it's wood with graphite. Sometimes it has an eraser, right? So when we talk about defining something as profound as liturgy, we will spend the entire course doing this, and towards the end of the course, we're not going to have just a simple sentence, but I think you're going to start getting it. Because it's almost like a person that unfolds in front of you, right? You get to know them better over the years. It's like that with this, all right? So I'm giving you a definition. I just want you to realize how that can never be all-encompassing any more than, somebody can give a definition of you or I, okay? So we'll talk in terms of our experiences. Now that being said, we could start talking about liturgy in terms of what it does. A pencil writes. If somebody was from another country and they use the word shovel, you might start using visuals to show them you can dig, right? So if we're trying to talk about the word liturgy and what it is to those that are unfamiliar, I'm going to say what happens. What is the purpose? A goal, by the way, when you hear me use words like goal, end, or purpose, it's all the same thing. An end is what you're doing. A goal is what you're doing. A purpose is what you're doing or why you're doing it. So what does it do? It glorifies God and it sanctifies man. And that may not be all out inspiring to you, but that is the reality of it, okay? Now, if you're like me, I have questions. Why does God need glory? I'll give you my 7th grade image. And I wasn't trying to be a smart aleck. I mean, a lot of times, smart alecks are kids that are trying to ask questions and understand it. They may not be very, how do you want to say, clear in how they're asking it. So, but it doesn't work good when you're in a Catholic school with nuns. So I raise my hand, I don't get it. Get the ruler. I would have liked the ruler. I don't understand, sister. I mean, what is this, like that God needs our glory? I mean, so I'm picturing, I see these photos, not photos, but paintings of like God on his throne and like billions and billions of people around him. I mean, it almost gives me the impression of like, and I'm not being irreverent, like, what is he, an egomaniac? Would he create all of us just to tell him how good he is? Okay, well, you can see, the hands coming out of the nun, right? But nonetheless, this is my concern. Now you maybe you have thought about it, maybe you haven't thought about it, or maybe you're thinking yeah, I wonder what. Okay, well, see, that's because you and I then had a very terrible image of God. All right? There was a lot of things we just didn't understand. Dullness of mind, okay? First of all, philosophically, God is perfect. There's nothing God needs, We would use big terms like, There's no potentiality in God. I mean, there's nothing God can become. He is. There's nothing you can have. Now, you can be an atheist and understand that concept, that the God is all-encompassing, is pure act. There's nothing in God that can become something. There's no needs. So, first of all, you know, you've heard it said before, there's no such thing as a bad question. I guess you figure there already is, right? As long as it leads you to other things. That's a bad question. Because technically speaking, now this would be a good true and false or something, right? Technically speaking, God needs nothing. And he certainly doesn't need our praise. You know, so then what are we talking about here? Okay? Well, this is really about honor. Okay? In other words, you know, if we talk about, you know, to be specific, let's make sure I'm giving it to everybody in the same way here. If I had today's things. I have no idea where they are. Glory is honor and praise, okay? Glory has to do with giving honor and praise. You know, sanctifying, we'll talk more about that, but that's about being made holy, right? So when we're at Mass, our goals is to give God honor and praise and also to make us holy. So those are the two things happening. But down here, as far as giving glory, here's something that will help. Okay, somebody walks in this door, right? And they randomly pick you lucky young guy. And he says, you know what? He says, you going to college? I got it. I'm picking up the tab. I got your books. He says, you don't worry about any, you know, even a part-time job, I'll give you some spending cash. He says, I know you probably need transportation. I got the car for you, too. Yeah, about it. And, you know, when you graduate, just to get your feet, I'll make sure that you at least get in the first job and it's, you know, decent pay. Okay. He did that for you. What would be your response? You'd be more than thank you, right? You'd be overwhelmed. You'd probably question, why did you do this? Right? You're probably saying, I mean, I've done nothing to deserve this. I'm sitting here along with everybody else.
I'm a good person.
You're a good person. But he doesn't know that, right? Glad he picked you. But nonetheless, you know, there's going to be not just a reaction, right? We already started talking about gratitude. There's going to be a response to that. That's what's happening at Mass. Okay? It's not about God being an egotistical, you know, supreme being who we better worship. Because, you know, to be honest, so what do you do in heaven? Well, it's continuous praise and worship of God. Well, what are you thinking? We're all sitting around and just, you know, how long can you keep saying, you're so big, you're so incredibly huge? I mean, how long can you do that? Well, see, those are images that I struggled with, but if I let them fester, which I did for some time, they wind up giving me a very, very inaccurate understanding of who God is, and then it then filters everything else. So, okay, you get the image if somebody came in here and gave him all those things for college. Now, what's the image we have of God? He created ex nihilo. He created out of nothing. He holds all of us in suspension simply by his love. What would be a proper response to that? Our lives, our very existence, the fact that we were created for him and for love, has to weigh more than getting your college paid for, as great as that is. So if there would be some natural response for somebody doing these things for you, how much greater is this? Now that may not sink in with you, right? You can intellectually know that, and that may not sink in. But that's the beginning of understanding this is what's happening at Mass. He doesn't technically need our glory. Okay? As far as sanctification, two things. Okay? Two things about that. First off, there's a separation, right? Anything that's made holy is separate. So what's happening is Mass is us as a people, and there's nothing individualistic about our understanding of Christ. Nothing. This is happening corporately, we would say, right? You're being set apart. So there's a separation, and the second thing is there's a firmness. All right? There's a firmness in your resolve. So when you one day get married, there are certain things in love you are saying. we use the word forsake all others. That's the separation. And then, until death do we part, to love and to hold and to cherish. There's a firmness in the resolve of this person. I'm going to struggle with you throughout this semester to look at everything personally. And to stop thinking that you're learning things about God. And I want to start to get it through your heads that you're actually walking into a relationship. And it changes everything. And if you think it's just a play on words, I'll keep trying to unfold that as we go. The nature of sanctification is there's a separateness and there's a firmness. And this is corporate. You do not go and become holy and have it not affect others, right? If you're such a good person, all those around you are the benefits of your virtue, okay? Unlike, Raymond, who, in other words, the problem with what Raymond said was that it's simply not true. We should be doing good things, but being good is not the purpose of Christianity. That's what Boy Scouts does, okay? That's what Boy Scouts is for, okay? Not Christianity. All right. Now, how is this all connected to love? In liturgy, now you don't have to write down this Bible quote, just be familiar with it. In liturgy, you fulfill loving God and your neighbor. So, even though the majority of you didn't think there's any sin in not going to Mass, the majority of you thought it was a sin in not loving God or loving neighbor. So, what is it? How is that connected to liturgy? So here, by the way, is the Bible verse, okay, from Matthew 22. What are the greatest commandments? I mean, this is, if you're wondering, see, the problem with Scripture is that we always focus on the things that aren't clear, and then we think that gives us wiggle room. But there's so much of it that's dead clear, but we don't like to talk about that because then that's going to convict us, right? So, what is the greatest commandment? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's every aspect of you. If it isn't the first thing in your world, then you're not holy. You're not being set apart. You're putting other things before God. This is the first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. All these two commandments depends all the law and the prophets. Glorifying God and sanctifying man. These are the goals of liturgy. This is what's happening at liturgy. If you're not there, what is not happening? Now, you're probably still thinking you can glorify God and sanctify man at home. Not in Christianity. Okay, and you know this. So you know this. Like, if he did get all that stuff, if somebody was going to pay for his 4-year college, give him a car, give him spending cash, and he never did anything, he just kind of nodded at the guy, you'd be asking him, how come you're not over there, hugging this guy, telling him thank you? I don't even know what to say. When my parents went with me, and what would you think if he said in turn, he knows I'm thankful. I mean, who wouldn't be thankful for that? Doesn't he know I'm thankful? You would question his gratitude, wouldn't you? I would. So why is that not true for a relationship you have with Christ? You would never in a million years. Please try that with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Don't contact them through any social media for 2 weeks. Don't really talk to them. You don't really have to be around them either. And by all means, when they ask you and question, I thought that we were going out, say, I like it. Come on. See how it works. They would never be convinced, would they? But somehow, we like to think that God is different. He's nothing more than an old person in the retirement home, and he's just glad when we show up once in a while and see him. You've missed the whole boat. It's not about you, right? That was the problem with Raymond. Then Deborah hit the nail on the head. Maybe we should have everybody come around here and sit around you on Sundays. It's not really about you. It's about you giving praise and glory to God, and it's about you sanctifying other men. You're not fulfilling either of those by staying home. I'm not out here to give you a guilt trip if you're a person that's Catholic and doesn't go to church. But this is what I struggled with, and these are the answers I came up with. I think they're pretty good answers. They're a lot better than saying if you don't go to church, it's a sin. It's a lot better than saying that, even though that's true. Okay? Now, We say this every time we have Mass. The priest says, "Pray, brethren, that our sacrifice may be acceptable to God, the Almighty Father." Does anybody find anything peculiar in that sentence? Well, let me start here. For those of you that are Catholic, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I always was confused about the sacrifice part being acceptable. What are we really sacrificing to God? I don't really understand that.
Okay, that's not a bad start. I like that. Yes.
So like kind of answer his question, like God would make us like sacrifice, like just to like see if you obey him and his overall your will to like just to like pray.
Okay.
Sometimes it's that, sometimes it's not like.
We'll make that part of it.
The being acceptable part.
Yeah, being acceptable. Okay. Like, please accept this.
Wasn't he saying like a sacrifice that we're taking the time out of our day to honor him, that he accepts that?
Okay. Well, you know,
Mr. John Wenzel, please come to the main office. Mr. John Wenzel, please come to the main office.
here, okay, you know, this is personal for me. Here's what really freaked me out. This is the obvious. This is the thing that artists, philosophers, and comedians see. What do you mean our sacrifice? Now, some of you are hinting towards that. I mean, the Eucharist is really about a representation. So we're not, you know, killing Jesus again. We'll get into that. It's a representation of Christ's sacrifice. Christ's sacrifice was complete, right? There's not a single thing you can add to Christ's sacrifice. Not a single thing. But yet, what we're talking about here is, why is his sacrifice being united with ours? So what I need you to put together is this. Remember I gave you my story about what is it that I do during the week? In other words, do I go to Mass because the nun told me that I get grace? Do I fill up my jar of marbles, and then during the week somehow my jar gets empty, then I go back to the filling station and fill up again? Okay, that was a very poor understanding of what was going on. That has no connection to this being our sacrifice. Christ's sacrifice is complete. Everything you do throughout the week. I mean, does anybody here have anything going on in their lives that stinks? Do you have anything that perhaps is an illness? Do you have anything that is just a mental anguish for you? Physical strain? You know? School is actually a privilege, okay? But all, and you know, in other words, there are many things that, the weights that you guys, there are many weights you and I carry in life. Sick people in the family, you know, burdens that we have to bear that sometimes seem overwhelming. Christ, I know this sounds odd. Christ is saying, I know what that is because I myself became man and died. I know what pain and suffering is. We can relate to that. He says, what I want you to do is I want you to bring that to me. And I want you to unite it. And I want you to unite it with my sacrifice so that it becomes our sacrifice. May the Lord accept our sacrifice at your hands for the praise and glory of his name, for our good and the good of all his holy church. If you doubt, or if you think I'm just being, you know, clever, saying that to glorify God and sanctify man is the goal of liturgy, you've been saying it every time. Accept our sacrifice for the praise and glory of his name, for our good, my sanctity, and for the sanctification of all the church. That's the goals of liturgy. You can work it out in your head. It doesn't happen at home. It just doesn't. Now, one last thing, and then we're done. I was listening to this Jewish convert to the Catholic faith. She became an evangelical and eventually a Catholic. Her name is Rosalind Moss. She struggled with this because she was hitting it more of an intellectual level. How can you add anything to Christ's sacrifice that's perfect? If what Christ did is perfect and he was God, how can me worrying about my grades or my mother's health add anything to that? Okay, so she had a young daughter and they were making cookies. Now maybe you've made cookies with your parents when you were little, or you have siblings, or you have, you know, cousins. They get flour and eggs all over the place, right? It's usually more of a mess than anything. So there she is making cookies with her daughter. She realized she is perfectly suited to the task. There's nothing her daughter can do to improve her making cookies. But the fact that she was allowing her daughter to make cookies with her, she asked herself, why do I do this? She goes, because that's what love does. Love shares in everything. That's what Christ did. Totally different understanding of just going to Mass. A little bit better than the work of the people. Any questions on that?